The myth becomes reality. The crystalline halls of Cravaxian Prime University gleamed under the three suns of the Xerian system. Professor Vethnar adjusted his forearms as he organized his research materials for what would become the most significant lecture of his career, though he didn't know it yet. The Department of Ancient Mythology had long been considered a quiet corner of academia, far removed from the practical sciences that drove Cravaxian civilization forward. Vethnar's specialty was the study of recurring mythological patterns across different galactic species. For the past 50 cycles, he had dedicated himself to understanding why so many unconnected civilizations shared remarkably similar legends about a mysterious species called humans. These stories painted a picture of bipedal creatures with extraordinary contradictions, physically weaker than most species yet somehow capable of surviving in environments that would kill others, technologically primitive in their origins, yet driven by an insatiable curiosity that supposedly led them to master the stars. The lecture hall filled with students, their bioluminescent skin patterns shifting with curiosity. Most attended out of academic requirement rather than genuine interest. Mythology, after all, was considered little more than the study of ancient fiction. Today we conclude our examination of the human mythos. Vethnar began, his voice resonating through the translator nodes embedded in the walls. These legends appear in the texts of 17 different species, separated by thousands of light years and millions of cycles. The consistency is remarkable, yet scientifically impossible. He activated the holographic display, showing various artistic interpretations of humans from different cultures. Some depicted them as warriors, others as healers, and still others as builders of impossible structures. The common elements were striking: bipedal stance, forward-facing eyes, and most peculiarly, an emotional range that seemed to exceed that of any known species. The Zelkani texts describe humans as the species that laughed at death. Vethnar continued. The Morthan archives speak of builders who dreamed beyond the stars. Even our own ancient writings mention the soft ones who broke the hard laws of nature. A student raised a tentacle. Professor, if these myths are so widespread, isn't it possible they're based on something real? Vethnar's patterns flickered with amusement. An excellent question, but consider the biological impossibilities. The myths claim humans could adapt to almost any environment within a single generation. They supposedly possessed something called adrenaline that gave them superhuman strength in moments of crisis. Most absurdly, they allegedly formed emotional bonds so strong they would sacrifice themselves for complete strangers. No species could function with such contradictory traits. The discussion continued for another cycle, with Vethnar systematically explaining why each aspect of human mythology defied biological and sociological laws. As he prepared to conclude, his assistant burst through the doorway, all four eyes wide with panic. "Professor, the High Command requests your immediate presence. Unknown vessels have entered our territory. They match the descriptions in your research." The lecture hall fell silent. Vethnar felt his patterns freeze in a configuration of disbelief. After a moment, nervous laughter rippled through the students. Surely this was some elaborate joke. But the assistant's patterns remained urgent, fearful. The Defense Council has authenticated the alert. 3 ships of unknown origin have appeared at the edge of our heliosphere. Their design. Professor, they look exactly like the vessels in the Threkeri manuscripts. Vethnar's world tilted. Either someone was playing an incredibly elaborate prank, or everything he thought he knew about the universe was about to change. The Cravaxian Defense Command was in chaos when Vethnar arrived. Military officials scurried between stations, their patterns flashing in rapid communication. High Commander Zeth stood before the main display, his posture rigid with tension. "Professor Vethnar," Zeth acknowledged without turning, "we need your expertise. These vessels appeared 6 cycles ago, moving at sublight speed. They've made no aggressive moves, but their technology." He paused. "We cannot explain their propulsion systems." The display showed 3 ships of elegant design, neither purely functional nor entirely aesthetic. They seem to embody a philosophy of engineering that prioritized both purpose and beauty, exactly as the myths described. Have they attempted communication? Vethnar asked, struggling to maintain scientific objectivity, while his patterns betrayed his excitement. Negative. They're approaching slowly, broadcasting what appears to be a mathematical sequence. Our cryptographers believe it's a peaceful greeting, but we can't be certain. Vethnar studied the ship's movements. They maintained perfect formation, while executing small maneuvers that seemed designed to display their capabilities without appearing threatening. It was exactly how the ancient texts described human first contact protocols. Patient, measured, respectful. Commander, I believe they're waiting for us to respond. The mathematical sequence, it's the universal constant for hydrogen. They're establishing a common reference point for communication. Seth's patterns flickered with uncertainty. You're suggesting we engage with them based on mythology. I'm suggesting we engage with them based on observed behavior that happens to match our myths. Vethnar corrected. If these beings are indeed human, the legends suggest they value communication over conflict. The next few cycles passed in tense preparation. Kravaxian linguists worked to establish communication protocols while the military prepared for every possible scenario. The mysterious ships continued their steady approach, now close enough for detailed scanning. When the lead ship finally transmitted a complex signal, the entire command center held its breath. The universal translator struggled for a moment before resolving into clear words. Greetings to the people of Kravaxian Prime. This is Commander Sarah Mitchell of the United Earth Ship Odyssey. We come in peace and friendship. We've been listening to your broadcasts for some time and have learned your language. May we have the honor of formal contact. The voice was warm yet professional, carrying undertones of excitement barely held in check. Vethnar felt his patterns shift involuntarily to match the emotional resonance, something that should have been impossible with an alien species. High Commander Zeth looked to Vethnar, then to his advisors. After a long moment, he activated the communication array. Commander Mitchell, this is High Commander Zeth of the Kravaxian Defense Force. Your arrival is unexpected. We require clarification of your intentions. The response came immediately, and Vethnar could swear he heard a smile in the voice. Our intentions are simple, High Commander. Exploration, understanding, and hopefully, friendship. We've spent generations searching for other intelligent life. Finding your civilization is a dream come true for us. You've been observing us. Zeth's patterns flickered with concern. Only your public broadcasts, Mitchell assured. We have strict protocols about respecting the privacy and sovereignty of other species. We learned your language and studied your culture to avoid misunderstandings. We know your people value knowledge and careful consideration. We try to approach in a way that honors those values. Vethnar stepped forward. Commander Mitchell, I am Professor Vethnar, a scholar of ancient mythology. Your species, humans, you appear in legends throughout the galaxy. We thought you were fiction. There was a pause, then a sound that the translator struggled with before identifying as laughter, the mythical human expression of joy. Professor, I think we have much to discuss. May we have permission to establish formal contact? We're eager to learn how humanity became mythology, and perhaps more importantly, how mythology is becoming reality. When legends walk among us. The orbital station designated for first contact gleamed like a jewel between Kravaxian Prime and its largest moon. Built in record time, it represented the pinnacle of Kravaxian engineering, a neutral ground where two species would bridge the gap between myth and reality. Professor Vethnar stood in the observation deck, watching the human shuttle approach. Beside him, High Commander Zeth maintained rigid military posture, though his patterns betrayed nervousness. A full diplomatic team waited in the reception hall, including scientists, cultural experts, and security personnel. Their shuttle is remarkably small, Zeth observed. The myths spoke of humans building massive constructions. The myths also spoke of their adaptability, Vethnar replied. Perhaps they build to suit the situation. The shuttle docked with surprising grace. Vethnar had studied every available record of supposed human technology, but seeing it in action was different. The craft seemed to flow into position rather than simply maneuvering, as if the pilot had an intuitive connection with the machine. When the airlock opened, 5 figures emerged. They walked upright on 2 legs, just as the myths described, wearing form-fitting suits that seemed to adapt to the station's environment. The lead figure removed her helmet, revealing features that matched the ancient descriptions perfectly: forward-facing eyes, a small nose, and a mouth that curved into what the myths called a smile. "Hi, Commander Zeth, Professor Vethnar," Commander Mitchell said, her voice warm despite the formal setting. "Thank you for this opportunity. May I introduce my team? Dr. James Chen, our xenobiologist; Lieutenant Maria Santos, our cultural specialist; Dr. Yuki Tanaka, our physicist; and Ambassador Robert Adebayor." Each human nodded as introduced, their faces showing subtle variations of features that Vethnar found fascinating. The myths had described human diversity, but seeing it firsthand was remarkable. Ambassador Adebayor stepped forward. "On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we thank you for your welcome. We understand our arrival must be shocking, given your cultural context." Vethnar couldn't contain his scholarly excitement. "Ambassador, you must understand. Your species appears in myths across the galaxy. How is this possible?" The humans exchanged glances, and Mitchell nodded to Dr. Tanaka. The physicist stepped forward, producing a small device. "Professor, we were hoping you could help us answer that question. We've discovered similar myths about humanity in every civilization we've encountered. It suggests something extraordinary about our shared history." The formal proceedings moved to the conference chamber, where both sides presented their perspectives. The humans shared their history, their rise from a single planet, their near destruction through war and environmental damage, their eventual unity and expansion to the stars. "We've been exploring for over 200 years, Mitchell explained. "Every species we found has stories about humans, yet none had ever seen us before. We began to wonder if we were chasing our own echoes across the galaxy." Dr. Chen activated a holographic display. "The biological markers are fascinating. Every species with human myths shows trace genetic markers that suggest ancient contact with Earth-based DNA. But the timeline doesn't match. These markers are millions of years old." Vethnar's patterns flashed with realization. The predecessor theory. Some synorchaeologists believe an ancient species seeded life throughout the galaxy, but we've never found direct evidence. Until now, Tanaka interjected. "We believe humans, or our ancestors, were that species. Something happened that scattered us across the galaxy, leaving only Earth with a surviving population. The myths aren't about us. They're about our ancestors." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Zeth leaned forward. "You're suggesting humans were once a galactic civilization that somehow fell." Mitchell nodded gravely. "The evidence points to some kind of catastrophe. We find ruins on dead worlds that match human architecture. Ancient texts that predate the myths describe a great empire that vanished overnight. We think modern humanity represents the survivors who lost their technology and had to rebuild from scratch." The cultural exchange continued for days. The humans demonstrated their technology, not the godlike powers of myth, but innovations that showed remarkable ingenuity. They shared their history, their struggles, their dreams for the future. What struck Vethnar most was their emotional range. The myths had described humans as beings of profound feeling, and the reality exceeded even those accounts. They laughed easily, showed genuine curiosity about Kravaxian culture, and displayed a capacity for empathy that transcended species barriers. During a break in formal proceedings, Vethnar found himself in conversation with Dr. Chen in the station's observation lounge. "Your people's reaction to us has been remarkable," Chen said, gazing at the planet below. "Fear, wonder, disbelief, all perfectly understandable. Yet you've welcomed us with such openness." The myths prepared us, in a way, Vethnar replied. They spoke of human kindness alongside human ferocity. They described a species that could be both gentle healers and fierce warriors. Seeing you here, seeking friendship rather than conquest, confirms the better parts of those legends. Chen smiled, an expression Vethnar was learning to interpret. The myths got one thing wrong, though. They describe us as impossibly versatile, able to adapt to anything. The truth is simpler. We're just stubborn. When faced with a challenge, we keep trying until we find a solution or die attempting it. Over the following weeks, integration began in earnest. Human ships arrived with cultural ambassadors, scientists, and traders. They established communication networks, shared technological advances, and began the slow process of weaving two civilizations together. The transformation was remarkable. Cravaxian engineers worked alongside human counterparts, combining their crystalline technology with human adaptive systems. Cultural exchanges flourished as humans learned Cravaxian pattern communication, while Cravaxians mastered human facial expressions. Not everyone welcomed the changes. Some Cravaxians feared human influence would overwhelm their culture. Others worried about the military implications of allying with a species known for warfare in the myths. These concerns came to a head during a public forum where citizens could voice their opinions. An elderly Cravaxian named Vitex stood to speak. The myths warn us about human aggression. They speak of wars that devastated planets. How can we trust them? Ambassador Adebayor responded personally. Your concerns are valid. Humanity has a complex history with violence. We've learned from our mistakes, but we don't hide from them. We offer transparency, full access to our historical records, our failures and our successes. Judge us by our actions, not by ancient stories. The forum continued for hours, with humans and Cravaxians alike sharing perspectives. By its end, a consensus emerged. The two species would proceed cautiously, but optimistically, building trust through shared experiences rather than promises. 6 months after first contact, Vethnar stood once again in his lecture hall. This time, his audience included both Cravaxian students and human observers. The course title had changed from Ancient Mythology to Living History. The greatest lesson we've learned, he began, is that myths often contain truth, but truth is always more complex than myths. The humans who walk among us today are neither the gods nor monsters of our legends. They are people, flawed, striving, remarkable people who remind us that the universe still holds wonders. In the front row, Commander Mitchell sat alongside her crew. She caught Vethnar's eye and smiled, a uniquely human expression that somehow conveyed more emotion than any Cravaxian pattern. The old myths were being rewritten by reality. Where once there were stories of impossible beings, now there were records of first contact, cultural exchange, and growing friendship. The galaxy had become larger and smaller simultaneously, larger in its possibilities, smaller in its connections. As Vethnar concluded his lecture, he reflected on how his life's work had transformed. He had begun by studying fictional beings in ancient texts. Now he was documenting the return of a lost galactic family, the reunion of civilizations separated by catastrophe and time. The humans had a saying, "Truth is stranger than fiction." Vethnar was beginning to understand what that meant. Outside the university, human and Cravaxian ships departed together for a joint exploration mission to the Outer Rim. The myths spoke of humans as eternal explorers, driven by insatiable curiosity. That part, at least, proved absolutely true. As the fleet sailed into uncharted space, both species faced the unknown together. The age of myths was ending. The age of shared discovery had begun. In the grand chronicle of galactic history, scholars would mark this as the moment when legends became partners, when ancient stories gave way to new chapters written by beings who had found each other across the vast emptiness of space. The humans were no longer myths to be studied but allies to be cherished, their return marking not an end but a beginning. The stars awaited, And for the first time in eons, humanity would not face them alone.